Chapter 281, 182. Huge waves surge. Yuan Dongji is defeated, _3. Even if killed, it would be a Pyrrhic victory, costing ourselves 800 to harm the enemy 1000. Now the situation is favorable, and there is absolutely no need for that. The most cost-effective way is to improve one's own strength just enough to surpass Yuan Dongji slightly. Then use the vines to delay her for a moment, creating time to whisk Lin Zikin away. Principal Yuan, struggle all you want. I'm taking my leave first. After the hunchbacked masked person finished speaking, he quickly approached Lin Zikin and stopped paying attention to Yuan Dongji. Yuan Dongji was truly in a panic this time, desperately trying to break free from the blood-red vines. Under her powerful strength, the blood-red vines that bound her began to slowly shatter, covered with cracks visible to the naked eye. But they were shattering too slowly, and she couldn't escape in a short amount of time. All she could do was watch as the hunchbacked masked person's figure grew farther and farther away, until it disappeared from her sight completely. Elsewhere, on the highway, Lin Zikin, looking at the fox's tail in his hand, didn't hesitate at all and simply thought, "Devour." The next second, 2 messages popped up from the void. You have devoured a strand of the nine-tailed fox demon's life essence. Nine-tailed fox demon codex, 10%. Lin Zikin was momentarily stunned by the content of the messages. That fox-eared girl was actually a nine-tailed fox demon? But she clearly had only one tail, and her strength was average, only her illusion techniques were impressive. This was nothing like the nine-tailed fox demon he had in mind. The nine-tailed fox demon in his mind was akin to celestial beings. At least, that's how myths from various countries described the nine-tailed fox demon in his past life. Perhaps, in this world, the nine-tailed fox demon is just a species of creature. No matter how many tails, they are all called nine-tailed fox demons. Lin Zikin just thought about it and didn't dwell on it too much. He quickly walked toward Shen Qinghan to see how his childhood sweetheart was doing. Looking at her, she still hadn't recovered. She just stood there blankly, in a state similar to sleepwalking. Han Han. Lin Zikin held Shen Qinghan's hand and softly called out to her. Hearing his voice, Shen Qinghan's eyes gradually regained their color and her consciousness became clearer. Xiao Chen. Shen Qinghan looked exhausted, and with a weary voice, she asked, What happened to me just now? You were under an illusion technique just now. Illusion technique. Shen Qinghan's memories started to return, and still somewhat befuddled, she said, Xiao Chen, I saw many strange things in the illusion technique. There were fish that could fly, birds that could swim, and flowers and plants that burst from the soil and ran all over the place. As she spoke, she saw the fox fur on the ground, and her whole body tensed up. She looked around with wide eyes, nervously asking, Xiao Chen, where's that fox-eared girl? Did you drive her away? Yeah, I drove her away. Lin Zikin said this, but in fact, he wasn't sure if the fox-eared girl had been killed by a punch or had fled with her tail cut off. He was totally ignorant about the nine-tailed fox demon in this world and didn't know what kind of tricks she might have up her sleeve. Too bad there's no signal here, can't go online. Otherwise, he could try to search the internet to see if there's any information available. Not wasting time thinking about these details, Lin Zikin collected his thoughts and quickly walked over to Li Moyu and the others. He used his voice to awaken the 3 and speed up the recovery of their consciousness. In just a short time, the 3 of them were able to speak and no longer just stood there blankly. At this time, Liu Tianrong, who was the first to be controlled by the fox-eared girl's mental power, also regained consciousness and quickly ran over to the group. Upon arriving in front of them, he immediately asked, What about that fox-eared girl? I drove her away. Lin Zikin said calmly. Upon hearing this, Liu Tianrong's eyes widened in disbelief. You actually drove her away? How did you do that? The fox-eared girl, with just a glance, had controlled him, leaving him completely powerless to fight back. He couldn't imagine how Lin Zikan, who was several ranks weaker than him, had managed to drive away the fox-eared girl. Lin Zikan offered a simple explanation, that fox-eared girl was strong in spiritual power but had a very weak body. After using her illusion techniques multiple times, she expended too much spiritual power, severely diminishing her combat strength, and in the end, I drove her away. Just like that. It sounds simple, but the process was quite tough. How strong was that fox demon's body? Felt like an ordinary 9th rank. What about her mental strength? I'm not sure about that, but when I faced her, I could clearly feel her spiritual power was almost depleted, and she could only control me for a short time. Lin Zikan spoke only the truth. However, he concealed many little details, not exposing too much in front of Liu Tianrong. After hearing this, Liu Tianrong analyzed, my mental strength is ordinary 9th rank, and since that fox-eared girl could instantly control me mentally, her mental strength is definitely above ordinary 9th rank. Combining your description of the fight and her usage of the techniques, I guess her mental strength is probably at the peak of ordinary 9th rank, or just entered advanced 1st rank. Previously, to control me instantly and for as long as possible, she used up most of her spiritual power, which led to a serious decline in her strength. Then, you, with only ordinary 8th rank mental strength, managed to overcome her. Yeah, that must be it. Liu Tianrong nodded, believing his reasoning made sense. Lin Zikan agreed it sounded reasonable, but regretfully the reality was not at all like that. The truth was, he had drained the fox-eared girl's spiritual power. Chapter 282, 182. Huge waves surge. Yuan Dongji is defeated, _4. With his advanced spirit biometric attribute, he resisted several illusion techniques, depleting the fox-eared girl's blue bar and then delivering a punch to her face to clear her health bar. Boom! Suddenly, a sound of the earth shaking and the mountains quaking came. Everyone looked in the direction of the noise at the first opportunity. But it was too far away, and for a moment, they couldn't make out what was happening. They could only see, indistinctly, that there was a large group of birds and beasts frantically fleeing in the distance ahead. Lin Zikan, assisted by the eye of the sky, saw it clearer than the others. But even he could only see which specific birds and beasts were flying, not why they were flying. He was very curious about what had happened behind the fleeing birds and beasts. So he immediately gathered his spiritual power to his eyes, further enhancing his eyesight. Once his vision was enhanced, the next moment, a terrifying, sky-high tsunami abruptly entered his sight. Wherever the tsunami passed, except for a few towering trees that stood over 100 meters tall and managed to survive, all other plants were swallowed up in an instant, disappearing completely into the waves tens of meters high. There's a tsunami coming from ahead. Everyone, climb the trees. Up that tree over 100 meters tall. Upon seeing the towering tsunami, Lin Zikan immediately warned the others loudly. Then he quickly picked up Shen Qinghan and rushed to the nearest towering tree over 100 meters tall, swiftly climbing to the very top. The 4 others were stunned for a moment, but upon realizing the situation, they also quickly climbed up. The speed of the tsunami waves was extremely fast, normally reaching up to 700–800 km per hour. Converted to seconds, that's roughly 200 meters per second. With the tsunami moving so swiftly, people like Lin Zikan, even if they ran so fast they sparked, couldn't possibly escape it. Unless they could fly. Setting aside a few genetic integrators who had fused with special exotic beast genes. A normal genetic integrator, if they wanted to achieve flight, would need to attain at least the rare level biological level. Only when reaching the rare level, with a significant increase in spiritual strength, could one achieve flight. And at this moment, the one with the highest biological level among people like Lin Zikan was Liu Tianrong. He was a high-level 6th order, a full 9 leagues away from the rare level. Therefore, all they could do was climb the trees to evade the impending tsunami. Lin Zikin had just noticed that where the tsunami had passed, many of the towering trees over 100 meters tall had managed to survive. This indicated that taking refuge in the trees was a viable strategy. Even if it was not possible to escape, it wouldn't matter if the tree was knocked down by the giant wave. As long as one wasn't standing on the ground, taking the full frontal impact of the tsunami on one's body, everything else was manageable. There really is a tsunami. My God, the waves are so high. Is it really safe to stand on the tree? As the waves surged closer and with the broad view from atop the tree, the others soon saw the approaching tsunami as well. The moment they saw the tsunami, they felt surprised at first, and then worried. Worried that the towering tree they were on would not withstand the tsunami's impact. How did you discover the tsunami? Lu Tianrong asked Lin Zikin, who was beside him. He couldn't understand. Despite being a high-level 6th order, he hadn't been able to spot the oncoming tsunami from the ground. How had Lin Zikin, whose biological level was only a common 8th order, managed to detect the tsunami so sharply? It didn't make sense. Lin Zikin casually explained, "This is a coastal forest." Suddenly, a large group of birds and beasts flew out from within the forest and started to flee in panic. It was most likely because a tsunami had occurred. So it was a guess. And I thought he had some way of discovering it, Lu Tianrong thought to himself. Boom! As the sensation of shaking ground and quaking mountains intensified. Soon, huge waves several tens of meters high surged over. They swept through everything in their path with unstoppable force, swallowing all objects along the way. Here it comes, hold on tight. Lu Tianrong reminded everyone aloud. Everyone was already holding on tight, their bodies clung to a thick tree branch. Shen Qinghan didn't hold onto a branch, she chose to curl up in Lin Zikin's arms, tightly held by him. Rather than a sturdy branch, she trusted the warmth of Lin Zikin more. Boom! Bang! Crack, crack, snap! The fierce tsunami kept crashing into the ground, creating the noise of various objects being instantly destroyed. The towering giant tree where several people were located shook violently under the impact of several waves, shedding a large amount of dead branches and leaves. Feeling the vibrations coming from beneath their feet, the people hiding at the top of the tree were all extremely nervous. They feared the giant tree they stood on would be toppled by the massive waves. Fortunately, the giant tree was as sturdy as they had imagined, and it finally stabilized without incident, not being felled by the waves. You have survived a tsunami, successfully living through the disaster. Achievement: survived 100 times in different extreme adverse environments or disasters. Reward: gained biometric attribute Survival of the Fittest. Total survival count, 2/100. Survival of the Fittest? Lin Zikin was momentarily stunned as several pieces of information appeared out of thin air, taking him a while to react. This achievement quest had popped up once a year ago and hadn't been seen since. Now, after more than a year, it had finally popped up a second time. The conditions for triggering it were just too harsh, hardly achievable in normal living environments. It really withstood it. That scared me to death just now. The impact was so fierce. If we hadn't been in the tree but on the ground, we probably wouldn't have died, but we would have been gravely injured. We would have been washed away for sure, probably torn into several pieces. Li Moyu and Luo Yongjian said in turn, their faces showing their lingering fears. Ma Ziwei wondered, why did a tsunami come out of the blue like this? Lu Tianrong speculated, unless I'm mistaken, this tsunami was probably Principal Yuan's doing. Principal Yuan is that powerful, capable of causing such a terrifying tsunami. Luo Yongjian was astonished, finding it hard to believe. Creating such a horrific tsunami was a feat one might expect from the Dragon King of myth. Li Moyu said, Principal Yuan is a rare-level creature, and a rare-level fighter who has integrated with the Jiaolong gene. It's not strange for him to be able to do this. Luo Yongjian was curious, Brother Yu, how do you know so much about Principal Yuan? Without explaining too much, Li Moyu simply said, the Li family, where I come from, has some business dealings with Principal Yuan's Yuan family, so I've had more contact and naturally know a bit more. Hearing this, Luo Yongjian was envious. He thought to himself how great it was to be a second-generation successor with connections everywhere. Unlike himself, whose family only manufactured sexy lingerie and had plenty of money but no such connections. In terms of networking, his family was far behind those that had been prominent for hundreds or thousands of years. Now the entire forest is submerged in seawater, the rare level fighter battle far away must have been won by Principal Yuan. Lu Tianrong said, looking in the direction that tsunami had come from, with a hint of a smile. Luo Yongjian agreed, definitely, Principal Yuan can even create a tsunami, how could the divine plant cult stand a chance? Mentor is so powerful, Shen Qinghan thought to herself. The recent overwhelming wave was incredibly shocking, something she felt only a deity from myths could achieve, and she greatly aspired to reach that level. Would she be able to create her own massive waves like her mentor one day after she grew stronger? Or perhaps, surpass her mentor? The more Shen Qinghan thought about it, the more she looked forward to it. Lu Tianrong, looking into the deep, unseen waters below, said with concern, I hope the others are all right, and that there are no casualties. The others he referred to were the special trainees from Jing University, the military district, and the machine god group. After being controlled by the fox-eared girl's spiritual power, he hadn't seen those 15 people again. Buzz! 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 Suddenly, a series of staggered whooshing sounds came from ahead. The noise was that of objects moving at high speed, rubbing against the air. Lin Zikin was the first to hear it. The moment he heard it, danger perception went wild. It pulsated more fiercely than ever before. Frowning immediately, Lin Zikin had an ominous feeling. In this coastal forest, only two rare-level fighters, Yuan Dongji and the hunchbacked masked man, could cause his biometric attribute danger perception to go wild. Yuan Dongji was one of their own and bore no malice, so he wouldn't trigger danger perception. That left only one possibility, the hunchbacked masked man was coming. Realizing this, Lin Zikin's expression changed slightly. Immediately afterward, he looked in the direction from which the sense of crisis was emanating. Under the enhancement of Eye of the Sky, he vaguely caught sight of a hunched figure leaping crazily from one towering giant tree to another, approaching rapidly in his direction. Upon closer inspection, it indeed was the hunchbacked masked man with a clover insignia on his mask. P.S. Bowl out, seeking monthly and recommendation tickets. Chapter 283, 183. The Earth Genius Who Makes Aliens Lose Their Luster. Principal Yuan is defeated. The ninth elder of the divine plant cult is rapidly approaching us. He's after me, I'll draw him away. Upon sighting the hunchbacked masked person, Lin Zikin immediately spoke to the few people beside him. Without staying for even a second longer, he leapt up and dove into the bottomless sea below, disappearing from sight. On land, him being only an ordinary ninth-rank creature, there was no chance of escaping from the hunchbacked masked man, whose biological level was of the rare level. Only in the water, there was a chance to create a miracle escape by relying on the biometric attribute, water's blessing. The few people who were still in the tree saw Lin Zikin suddenly dive into the water and disappear, and for a moment, they were unable to react. It wasn't until Lu Tianrong also saw a hunchbacked figure rapidly approaching from the distance that he was the first to come to his senses and shouted, "Everyone follow me and leave, run in the opposite direction from Lin Zikin." No sooner had he finished shouting than he realized the hunchbacked figure in the distance had suddenly changed direction. No longer was the figure rapidly approaching the giant tree they were on, but instead, it took a wide turn and started chasing rapidly toward the right side. Following the hunchbacked figure's direction of travel, he saw a figure that surprised him. It was Lin Zikin. Lin Zikin, who had just dived into the sea less than 10 seconds ago. Liu Tianrong was dumbfounded by the scene in front of him. How could he have swum hundreds of meters in less than 10 seconds? And it wasn't underwater swimming, but freestyle swimming on the surface of the water. Even he, a senior 6th order, could not achieve such a speed in freestyle swimming. More accurately, he could not even reach half that speed. Faced with this, Liu Tianrong was full of doubt about what he was seeing and couldn't make sense of it. Lin Zikin was just an ordinary level creature, how could he swim so fast in the water? Could it be that he had fused with an exotic beast gene related to water? But that didn't make sense. Lin Zikin was following the pure-blood human path and couldn't fuse with exotic beast genes. So what was going on? Liu Tianrong was completely at a loss and began to suspect he was hallucinating. "Instructor, why haven't we left yet?" Seeing Liu Tianrong shouting about leaving but then freezing on the tree himself, Li Moyu was very puzzled. Hearing Li Moyu's voice, Liu Tianrong snapped back to reality and said, "Let's get out of here, quick!" With that, he took the lead and dove straight into the sea below, swimming freestyle away in the direction opposite Lin Zikin. Seeing this, Li Moyu and the others followed suit and jumped in. "King Han, what are you dazed about up there? Jump down!" Seeing Shen King Han still standing in the tree, Ma Ziwei shouted at her, puzzled. At this moment, Shen King Han was gazing in the direction where Lin Zikin was, her face full of concern. Her vision was not strong, she couldn't see Lin Zikin's figure. But through the ripples of the water, she could accurately sense Lin Zikin's position. "It's all because I'm useless. If I had enough strength, I wouldn't have to rely on Xiao Chen taking risks to draw danger away from me every time we face it. It's all my fault, all because I'm useless." Gazing in the direction of Lin Zikin, Shen Qinghan was incessantly blaming herself, feeling increasingly oppressed. She felt like a burden, having never provided any help to Lin Zikin, only holding him back at critical moments. She thought that without her, Lin Zikin would have been much more at ease when facing danger. Instead of always having to be cautious and restrained. "King Han! What on earth are you doing? Come down quickly!" Seeing Shen Qinghan not responding at all, Ma Ziwei in the water shouted at her urgently. Finally hearing her shouting, Shen Qinghan quickly came to her senses and apologized. I'm sorry, I'm coming right now." After speaking, she darted down, entering the water with a smooth motion. Not a splash was made. All there was a series of gentle ripples spreading smoothly on the surface of the water. Ma Ziwei rubbed her eyes, thinking she had seen something wrong. How come there was not a splash when jumping from dozens of meters high above the water? What was happening? Before she could understand what was going on, a shout from Liu Tianrong came from ahead. "You two girls, stop dawdling, swim fast." "Coming." Ma Ziwei replied and quickly swam up. Shen Qinghan, uncharacteristically silent, followed behind, occasionally looking back in Lin Zikin's direction with a worried expression on her face. Elsewhere, with the boost from water's blessing, Lin Zikin was swimming frenetically at high speed on the surface of the water. He could swim faster if he chose to dive. The reason he chose the slower freestyle was that he needed to expose himself on the water's surface to attract the hunchbacked masked man. He was not sure the hunchbacked masked man would be able to detect him if he dove under the water. If not, Shen Qinghan might be in danger. After swimming freestyle for hundreds of meters, Lin Zikin noticed that the direction of the hunchbacked masked man finally changed. It was no longer heading towards Shen Qinghan. Instead, the figure changed their course and was now sprinting at high speed towards him. Seeing this, he couldn't help but sigh in relief, then immediately accelerated sharply and swam freestyle madly. After swimming some distance and ensuring the hunchbacked masked man was following, he decisively dove to the bottom, increasing his swimming speed to the fastest. The hunchbacked masked man had been successfully lured over. Chapter 284, 183. The Earth Genius Who Makes Aliens Lose Their Luster _2. The next step was to shake off the hunchbacked masked man and escape to safety. And the direction of escape was chosen earlier when the waves were surging toward them. If the previous waves were indeed created by Yuan Dongji using his powers, then moving in the direction of the incoming waves, there was a high probability of encountering Yuan Dongji. Lin Zikan guessed. Although Yuan Dongji had been defeated, he most likely hadn't died. Instead, he was like Liu Tianrong before him, ensnared by the enemy with vines. This guess was founded on solid ground. The evidence lay in the fact that the hunchbacked masked man did not seem badly injured, indicating that his battle with Yuan Dongji was not fierce. A fight between equal powerhouses could not be non-intense if intent on killing the other. After all, they were combatants of the same level, and the disparity was unlikely to be so great that one could kill the other without sustaining any injuries. Therefore, the possibility of Yuan Dongji dying in battle was almost zero. It was highly probable that he was just trapped by the hunchbacked masked man with vines, unable to escape for the moment. Based on this, the next plan was to figure out a way to rescue Yuan Dongji. After that, let Yuan Dongji fight the hunchbacked masked man again and reciprocally help him to his release. I hope Principal Yuan was really trapped by vines, and not killed in battle. I hope this newly acquired biometric attribute, Forest Lord, can control the divine plant cult Ninth Elder's vines that impeded Principal Yuan. I just hope I won't be caught by the divine plant cult Ninth Elder before I can find Principal Yuan. Lin Zikan prayed silently in his heart as he swam forward with all his might, his nerves stretched tight, greatly fearing that he would fail. Above the water, the hunchbacked masked man was rapidly chasing after Lin Zikan. When Lin Zikan dove under the water and his swimming speed suddenly exploded to an extremely exaggerated level, the hunchbacked masked man's face was filled with shock. How could an ordinary level creature swim so fast? Moreover, this ordinary level creature took the pure-blood human path and had never fused with any exotic beast gene related to water. What in the world was going on? The hunchbacked masked man was utterly baffled. He had lived nearly 200 years and seen countless genius individuals from Earth and those from Origin Land, but had never seen a special existence like Lin Zikan. Clearly walking the pure-blood human path, without having fused with any exotic beast gene. Yet the strength of his body and spirit far surpassed his same-aged genetic integrators. And now, he was even demonstrating underwater abilities that outstripped those of his aquatic genetic integrator peers. No. Not just outstripped, but far surpassed. The powerful underwater capabilities Lin Zikan displayed at this moment far exceeded those of his peers with aquatic genes. Such an extraordinary performance completely refreshed the hunchbacked masked man's understanding of Earthlings. It turned out that even Earth, with its scarce evolutionary resources, could also nurture a peerless genius that did not lose out to the exotic beings of Origin Land. This child is truly a demon. We need to make a quick decision and bring him back to the main church. Lest delay leads to unexpected changes. The hunchbacked masked man thought to himself, and his speed exploded, advancing with lightning speed by leaping across the giant trees. Within just a few seconds, he had significantly closed the distance with Lin Zikan, nearly upon him. Then with a single thought, he controlled several vines to dive into the water, chasing after Lin Zikan swimming underwater. The vines moved with great speed, catching up to Lin Zikan in no time, one after another wrapping around him like pythons. Facing the incoming vines, Lin Zikan simply performed a smooth, serpentine swimming maneuver, easily evading them. With the blessing of water fusion, the water was his home ground. In contrast, the vines encountered much resistance in the water, and their chasing speed decreased significantly. This increase and decrease greatly improved his chances of escape. How could an ordinary level creature possess such powerful underwater abilities? The hunchbacked masked man was very puzzled inside. The underwater capabilities Lin Zikan demonstrated at the moment were comparable to a high-level aquatic genetic integrator. And it wasn't just any high-level genetic integrator, but one of the middle tier. Such performance was far too illogical. Even in Origin Land, most would pale before Linziken. Boom boom boom. The hunchbacked masked man summoned a host of vines, which shot into the water intensively like rain, surging rapidly towards Linziken. If a few vines couldn't catch Linziken, then dozens or hundreds would. No matter how agile Linziken was underwater, facing the vines coming from all directions, he could only be neatly captured. Underwater. All of Linziken's blood vessels dilated as he continuously exerted his blood chi power. With the blessing of water fusion, he swam faster than the marlins in the ocean of his previous life. His swimming speed neared 100 meters per second. Yet even so, the vines coming from behind continued to close the distance. One was at the ordinary level, the other at the rare level. The disparity in biological level between the two was just too vast. The resulting power gap could not simply be bridged by a mere blessing of water fusion. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Accompanied by a series of piercing sounds. The vines controlled by the hunchbacked masked man had caught up with Linziken ahead. After catching up, they did not twist around him immediately. Instead, some accelerated ahead of Linziken. Not until there were vines in all 6 directions, front, back, left, right, above, and below, completely blocking Linziken's escape space, did they strike all at once like swift pythons wrapping around him. Linziken wanted to dodge, but there was nowhere to hide. The vines were too numerous, leaving no room for maneuver. Without even a chance to struggle, he was instantaneously ensnared by the surging vines, immobilized. Chapter 285, 183. The Earth Genius Who Makes Aliens Lose Their Luster _3. Immediately afterward, his entire body was violently jerked upward, about to fall into the hands of the hunched figure in the mask. As he was being pulled up, Linziken had a thought and expended spiritual power to use Forest Lord, attempting to control the vines on his body. He could sense the vines, but couldn't control them. His spiritual strength was far inferior to that of the hunched figure in the mask, unable to wrest control of the vines. Fortunately, the advanced spirit biometric attribute was there to enhance his spiritual power. Empowered by advanced spirit, Linziken expended a large amount of spiritual power and finally wrested a small portion of control over the vines. In the moment just before being pulled out of the water, he managed to loosen some of the vines wrapped around him. Then, he instantly escaped from the layers of entanglement and quickly dived back to the bottom, swimming frantically to get as far away as possible from the hunched figure in the mask on the surface. On the surface, the hunched figure in the mask was baffled. He was about to pull the person up. How could the vines suddenly loosen their grip uncontrollably? What on earth was happening? With no time for confusion, the hunched figure in the mask quickly made another move. He controlled more vines than before, rapidly surging toward Linziken. Just for a brief instant, the surging vines again bound Linziken tightly. Just at the moment he was about to be pulled out of the water. Like before, the vines wrapped around him inexplicably loosened. He watched Linziken break free from the deathly entanglement of the vines and, in the blink of an eye, swim out 100 meters, once again fleeing for his life. What was going on? Why did the vines loosen again? The hunched figure in the mask furrowed his brows in perplexity at the scene before him. After carefully recalling the event, he noticed a detail. At the moment the vines loosened, a faint spiritual fluctuation seemed to emanate from the water. Could it be Linziken was able to use spiritual power to control the vines? The idea flashed through the hunched figure's mind. But soon, he negated it himself. The strength of Linziken's spirit was great. But that was in comparison to his peers. Compared to him, a rare-level fighter, it was the difference between an ant and an elephant, without any grounds for comparison. Not just Linziken, even Yuan Dongji, who was also at the rare level, couldn't contest control of the vines with him. Unless Yuan Dongji had also merged with the gene of a wood sprite and gained the ability to control plants. The mere act of using spiritual power to control objects from a distance couldn't possibly wrest control of the vines. After thinking this through, the hunched figure in the mask made another attempt at Linziken. Like the previous 2 times, he easily manipulated the vines to bind Linziken tightly, to avoid a sudden and inexplicable release like the last 2 times. This time, the hunched figure in the mask deliberately controlled the vines to cocoon Linziken tightly, leaving no space within like a chrysalis. The vines twisted around each other tightly, allowing no chance of escape. However, just as the chrysalis was about to be pulled above the water, a strong spiritual fluctuation emerged from within. The next second, the tightly wound chrysalis instantly disintegrated, becoming loose and scattered vines. Linziken, once trapped inside, immediately shot out like an arrow, swimming more than 100 meters in an instant. The hunched figure in the mask stood in shock, his eyes wide with disbelief, unable to fathom the scene before him as real. It wasn't an illusion. It really wasn't an illusion. Linziken was indeed able to use spiritual power to control the vines. But how was that possible? How did he manage it? The hunched figure in the mask was staggered beyond measure, momentarily believing he was dreaming. This was no longer a matter of being comparable to a mutant. It was far beyond a mutant. Even the most talented mutant he had ever seen paled in comparison to Linziken and had no place to stand on equal footing with him. He has a secret. Linziken definitely has a great secret on him. Bringing him back to the headquarters, he will certainly be a huge accomplishment that shocks the entire organization. Perhaps, I could use this to earn key support within the church and have a chance to break through to the epic level. Thinking this, the hunched figure in the mask's breathing became rapid, his eyes brimming with fervor. Immediately, he leaped into the water, determined to capture Linziken personally. Seeing the hunched figure in the mask no longer using the vines but instead diving into the water to pursue, Linziken knew he couldn't continue to lead him on any longer and had to use his real skill to escape. Otherwise, if he truly fell into the hands of the hunched figure in the mask, he would completely lose any chance to turn the tables. It's time to break free. I hope Han Han and the others have gotten far enough away. Thinking this, Linziken had a thought and used his biometric attribute natural camouflage, completely concealing his presence. Then he quickly swam toward a towering giant tree ahead, using the cover of the giant tree to vanish from the hunched figure's sight. The hunched figure in the mask hurriedly followed. In less than 2 seconds, he swam to the other side of the tree. Then he discovered that Linziken had completely disappeared without a trace, with no sign of where he had swum. What remained were only thick tree trunks soaked in the water. Where was he? In just 2 short seconds, where could he have swum to? How could the person just vanish into thin air? The hunched figure in the mask was filled with suspicion. Soon, he had a thought and spread his spiritual power to cover a region within a kilometer radius, using his spiritual perception to search for the vanished Linziken. He guessed that Linziken must be hiding behind one of the towering giant trees. Chapter 286, 183. The Earth Genius Who Makes Aliens Lose Their Luster _4. As long as he spread out his spiritual power, Linziken's figure would quickly be detected, and he could capture him and bring him back to the cult. However, when his spiritual power had completely covered the area within a kilometer radius, he failed to find any trace of Linziken. What was going on? How could he not sense his presence? The hunched figure in the mask was baffled, unable to comprehend how Linziken had vanished completely. After the initial confusion came urgency. Linziken was his cash cow, and he couldn't accept that the duck within his grasp had flown away. A person can't just suddenly disappear. He must still be around. He must be hiding somewhere. Thinking thus, the masked figure once again concentrated and spread out his spiritual power. This time, he wasn't just dispersing spiritual power to cover the surrounding area. Instead, he used his spiritual power to control the towering trees around him, shaking them wildly in an attempt to find Linziken. Regrettably, No matter how much he shook the trees, Linziken's figure remained elusive. It seemed as if Linziken had already left the area. And not as he had suspected, hiding behind or atop one of the towering trees. He managed to escape. Why should he be able to escape? If I weren't set on capturing him alive, he would have had no chance to flee from my hands. The more the masked figure thought about it, the angrier he became, and he began to violently whip the huge trees around him with his controlled vines as an outlet for his frustration. In just a moment, he had uprooted dozens of the giant trees, which crashed into the water with loud bangs, splashing water high into the air. He couldn't accept the fact that Linziken had escaped. As a rare level fighter, being outsmarted by an ordinary level creature was an intolerable humiliation. After venting his anger, the masked figure calmed down slightly. He surged out of the water and landed on one of the towering trees that had not been knocked down by the vines. While surveying his surroundings for Linziken, he fell into contemplation, pondering why Linziken, if he could swim underwater faster and evade the senses, hadn't used those two abilities from the start. After a brief reflection, he realized a possibility. Linziken had refrained from using those two skills to escape initially, aiming to lure him and buy time for the others to get away. Now that he had bought enough time, he no longer concealed his true strength and instantly broke free and escaped. Upon understanding this, the masked figure didn't waste time and swiftly leaped towards the location where Shen Qinghan and the others had been. He thought that after escaping, Linziken would likely return to regroup with Shen Qinghan and the others. If he went back to pursue Shen Qinghan now, there was a good chance he would encounter Linziken. Wait! That's not right. I might have made a mistake. The masked figure had barely sprinted a few hundred meters when he suddenly stopped at the top of a towering tree. Another possibility crossed his mind. He suspected that Linziken hadn't gone back to meet up with Shen Qinghan and the others. Instead, he might have gone to rescue Yuan Dongji and free the rare level fighter. This suspicion was not baseless. Firstly, Linziken could control vines with his spiritual power. Secondly, the direction Linziken had fled was along the surge of the waves, and that direction happened to be where Yuan Dongji was trapped. Would Linziken return to meet up with his teammates? Or would he go rescue Yuan Dongji? After a moment of thought, the masked figure concluded that it was more likely Linziken would attempt to rescue Yuan Dongji. So without further thought, he immediately turned and sprinted towards Yuan Dongji's location. On the other side, Linziken swiftly swam towards the direction of the approaching waves. At this moment, he did not know whether he had successfully shaken off the pursuit of the hunchbacked masked man. He only knew that he could no longer sense the existence of the hunchbacked masked man. He guessed that he should be safe for now. But it was only a temporary safety. After all, the hunchbacked masked man was a powerful rare-level fighter and might have some special means of tracking people. He could catch up again later. He must take advantage of this gap to find the trapped Yuan Dongji and rescue her. Only if Yuan Dongji was saved could he and the others be saved. Otherwise, before rescue from the military district could arrive, they would probably all be found by the hunchbacked masked man one by one, and then either be killed or taken away. About half a minute later, Linziken, who was rapidly swimming underwater, vaguely sensed Yuan Dongji's presence. He surfaced and looked in the direction from where the presence came. Immediately, what came into view was a gigantic tree cage hundreds of meters tall. Found it! A thought flickered in Linziken's mind. He then immediately dove back underwater and swam as fast as he could towards the tree cage. About 10 seconds later, Linziken swam a distance of over 1,000 meters and finally entered inside the tree cage. He quickly surfaced and saw Yuan Dongji, who usually held a commanding presence, now entangled in strange blood-red vines and suspended mid-air, completely unable to move and looking extremely wretched. Seeing this scene, his first thought was to issue a command to the blood-red vines wrapped around Yuan Dongji, unleash. Under the effect of Forest Lord, the blood-red vines around Yuan Dongji, upon hearing the command unleash from Lin Zikin, obediently loosened a bit. Due to Lin Zikin's low spiritual power, the vines only loosened slightly and were not as constricting as before. However, for Yuan Dongji, this was enough. In the moment when the blood-red vines slightly loosened, Yuan Dongji's chi blood erupted instantly, and with a fierce effort, she broke free from all the blood-red vines. She did not connect the sudden loosening of the vines to Lin Zikin, thinking it was due to her own struggling, and that she had finally broken free from the restraints of the blood-red vines. Principal Yuan. Seeing Yuan Dongji successfully escape, Lin Zikin shouted out to her. Yuan Dongji. Following the voice, looked at him, her expression a bit surprised. How did you get here? When did you arrive? Like the hunchbacked masked man, she could not sense Lin Zikin, who was using natural camouflage. Lin Zikin explained, I was just being chased by the ninth elder of the divine plant cult, relying on my excellent swimming ability I escaped all the way here, and just happened to find you. He did not tell Yuan Dongji that it was he who had saved her and helped loosen the entanglement of the blood-red vines. Biological level could be revealed, spiritual power could also be revealed, but the ability to control vines must absolutely not be exposed. With disbelief on her face, Yuan Dongji said, you actually managed to evade the pursuit of the ninth elder of the divine plant cult. No sooner had she spoken than a series of loud whooshing sounds suddenly came from outside the tree cage. Buzz! 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 Yuan Dongji, upon hearing the noise, immediately spread her spiritual power to sense what was happening. When she sensed that the hunchbacked masked man was rapidly approaching the tree cage, her face changed slightly. The ninth elder of the divine plant cult is coming, let's go. After speaking, Yuan Dongji leapt into the water, grabbed Lin Zikin in her arms, and with her powerful swimming ability, fled with him underwater. She knew she was no match for the hunchbacked masked man and was very clear that escaping with Lin Zikin was the right choice. P.S. Holding out my bowl, begging for monthly votes and recommendation tickets. Chapter 287, 184. Dire situation. Single-handedly battling two rare-level fighters. So fast. Lin Zikin was whisked through the water at breakneck speeds by Yuan Dongji, clearly feeling that Yuan Dongji's underwater speed was more than 10 times his own. In just a brief moment, they had surged hundreds of meters away. This directly left the pursuers wearing hunched-back masks far behind, losing sight of them completely. It should be known that the mask-wearers were rare-level fighters, and their overall strength was even stronger than Yuan Dongji's. However, at this very moment, when it came to velocity, the mask-wearers couldn't compare with Yuan Dongji at all. The reason for this was terrain. On land, the mask-wearers could crush Yuan Dongji in speed. Unfortunately, their current location was an ocean terrain, Yuan Dongji's absolute home ground. After more than 10 seconds, Yuan Dongji had taken Lin Zikin nearly 10,000 meters away. They moved from the deep water zone to the shallow water zone. They had completely shaken off the pursuit of the mask-wearers. Splash! Yuan Dongji surfaced. She brought Lin Zikin up through the water, creating a huge splash on the surface and then soaking wet, they landed on a towering giant tree. Normally, even at high speed, she could emerge as calm as a mirror with only a faint ripple. But now, her physical condition was terrible, unable to precisely control every part of her body. Earlier during the fierce battle with the mask-wearers, she had overactivated the exotic beast gene within her body, leading to a tendentious mutation occurring and losing some control over it. That was the weakness of a genetic integrator. While relying on the exotic beast gene for extraordinary powers, they also risked the backlash of that exotic beast gene. We're safe now, Yuan Dongji said with a somewhat pale face as she set Lin Zikin down. Lin Zikin leaned against the trunk in front of him, his face just as pale, feeling dizzy and nauseous. The former was due to discomfort from the backlash of the exotic beast gene. The latter was because the undercurrent speed had been too fast, exceeding the limits his body could withstand, causing his chi blood to go awry and leading to dizziness and nausea. Xiao Chen! An anxious voice called out. Lin Zikin took a moment to look in the direction of the voice and saw Shen Qinghan, whom he longed for, perched atop another towering giant tree. Besides, above Shen Qinghan, he saw over a dozen military mechanized beings, 2 armed helicopters, and 1 giant mech. The military rescue had arrived. No wonder Principal Yuan said they were safe now, the military rescue had finally come. Lin Zikin breathed a sigh of relief. Swoosh! A crisp sound of leaves and branches scraping against each other rose. Shen Qinghan, not knowing where she found it, swung over through tens of meters of distance with a sturdy vine. Lin Zikin reached out to catch her and held her tight in his arms. Soon, Lu Tianrong, Li Moyu, and others also swung over one after the other, clutching the vines. They were all dripping wet, evidently having emerged from the water not long ago. It was likely that they had just seen the military rescue and decided to stop fleeing underwater, instead climbing trees to wait for the military reinforcement. Principal Yuan, are you all right? Lu Tianrong approached Yuan Dongji, seeing her pale face, and couldn't help but respectfully express his concern. Yuan Dongji replied indifferently, I'm fine. Then, she asked, why is it only you few, where are the other special training students? Lu Tianrong said with a guilty face, we were attacked by a fox-eared girl earlier, and then we all got separated, and we haven't found anyone yet. I see. Yuan Dongji nodded and asked no further. Separated meant separated, she did not care, as long as the 5 students from Shan University were not separated. Meanwhile, Shen Qinghan stepped down from Lin Zikin's arms, her eyes brimming with tears as she looked at him and said, Xiao Chen, I was really worried, afraid you would be kidnapped by the people from Divine Plant Cult. Can we not participate in these dangerous training sessions anymore? Yet, we won't participate anymore. Lin Zikin wiped her tears with his hand and nodded immediately without a second thought. He was not sure if he would participate in the future. But he knew Shen Qinghan needed to hear such an answer to soothe her right now. Xiao Chen, are you hurt anywhere? Just some minor skin injuries, but they've all healed now. Where were you hurt? Let me see. They've already healed. Even if they've healed, I still want to see. Shen Qinghan insisted. Lin Zikin, somewhat helplessly, extended a hand for her to inspect, saying, my wrist was injured earlier, some skin was broken by the vine, but it has all healed now, you can't even tell it was injured. Shen Qinghan silently took Lin Zikin's hand and carefully examined his wrist to see if it had indeed healed. Lin Zikin let her inspect, looking up at the military reinforcements in the sky. Not one genetic integrator among them, all mechanical beings, along with 2 armed helicopters and a massive mech. After a quick scan, Lin Zikin's gaze soon settled on the only mech present. It was the Shanghai, previously seen in the military district, a behemoth standing 10 meters tall. The pilot who had been responsible for bringing the students from Shan University to the military district had done a simple introduction of this mech. It was named after Shanghai City, and its combat capabilities were said to match those of rare-level creatures. Hum! Accompanied by the noise of anti-gravitational propulsion devices firing up. The Shanghai mech came alive. From the space in front of them, it moved slowly toward the towering tree where Lin Zikin was, hovering horizontally in front of Yuan Dongji. Seconds later, a compartment in the chest of the mech opened, revealing a mechanized human with most of his body metallized. Chapter 288, 184, Desperate Situation. A lone battle against 2 rare-level fighters, _2. There was a man with a full beard. Principal Yuan, an hour ago we received your distress signal from the military district, saying that the 9th elder of the Divine Plant Cult had led an attack on the special trainees, and that you had managed to intervene in time. What's the situation now? The man looked at Yuan Dongji and asked about the attack. Yuan Dongji did not answer the question, but instead coldly countered, you knew it was sent over an hour ago, so why did your military district take so long to get here? There was trouble in the military district. The man explained with a hint of apology. Some heretics who had been undercover for years in the military district suddenly acted up, preventing us from coming to your aid. Yuan Dongji frowned. What kind of heretics are capable of delaying you for so long? The man hesitated before replying in a low voice. You might find this hard to believe, but Deputy Commander Chen is a heretic planted inside the military district by the Divine Plant Cult. The problem isn't resolved yet. Commander Yao is still facing off against Deputy Commander Chen in the military district, and the situation is at a standstill. It took me quite an effort to be able to pilot the Shanghai to come here for rescue. Deputy Commander Chen is a heretic? Upon hearing the man's words, Lu Tianrong's eyes widened in disbelief. How could a deputy commander in the military district be a heretic of the Divine Plant Cult? What was going on? And had the Divine Plant Cult gone mad? Just to kidnap Lin Zikan, were they actually willing to pay such a high price, exposing a heretic who had worked up to the position of a deputy commander in the military district? Was it worth it? Was there some secret within the pure-blood human path? Did the Divine Plant Cult go to all lengths to take Lin Zikan away, regardless of sacrificing a heretic who was a deputy commander? Lu Tianrong was filled with countless thoughts. On the other side, having explained why his rescue came so late, the man piloting the mecha asked again, Principal Yuan, what's the specific situation on your end now? Yuan Dongji still didn't answer, his tone tinged with dissatisfaction. Now that the battle is over, you come to provide support and still ask what the situation is. Is there any point? This. The man looked guilty and didn't know how to respond. Yuan Dongji didn't waste words with him and went straight to the point. The military district is still in chaos, we can't return yet. Lend us one of your armed helicopters. I need to take my students from Shan University back first. The man felt this was inappropriate. Principal Yuan, the trainees from Jing University, the Mech God Consortium, and our military district haven't been found yet. How about you join me in looking for them before we all leave together? If you are here, if the ninth elder of the Divine Plant Cult shows up, I can easily take them down with your help. If you leave, should the ninth elder of the Divine Plant Cult come, just this Shanghai mecha I'm piloting might have difficulty resisting. Yuan Dongji was unconvinced. You're overthinking it. The goal of the Divine Plant Cult was to capture Lin Zikan. As long as Lin Zikan is gone, the other special trainees are safe. The man's face showed difficulty. That's easy to say, but better safe than sorry, Principal Yuan. Perhaps you should stay and work with me. As he finished speaking, there was a faint sound of something cutting through the air in the distance. Buzz. 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 Hearing this noise, Lin Zikan and Yuan Dongji immediately looked in the direction of the sound. The former with the help of Eyes of the Sky, and the latter with her high rare level mental strength, saw the arrivals from a distance of over 1,000 meters. It was the hunchbacked man in a mask. He was rapidly jumping from one giant tree to another, heading straight in their direction. In just a moment, the hunchbacked man had jumped hundreds of meters, entering the field of view of everyone present. Principal Yuan, the ninth elder of the Divine Plant Cult is here. The man warned anxiously. He immediately closed the hatch and operated the mecha to enter combat mode. The other mechanically modified humans also turned toward the incoming hunchbacked man as if facing a formidable enemy. Yuan Dongji frowned deeply, looking at the rapidly approaching hunchbacked man, filled with puzzlement. Couldn't the ninth elder see such a huge mecha? Alone, how dared he approach so quickly? Wasn't he afraid of being ganged up on? You should know that the combat power of a mecha can rival that of a rare level fighter. Where did the ninth elder of the Divine Plant Cult get the confidence to face, alone, both a large mecha with rare level strength and a rare level fighter of the same class? As Yuan Dongji pondered this, her expression suddenly turned ghastly pale. Immediately, she grabbed Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan, the childhood sweethearts, and leaped into the water with them. Using both her chi blood and mental energy, she erupted with speed to escape the area as fast as possible. There's an undercover agent among the reinforcements. An agent working with the Divine Plant Cult. Otherwise, why would the ninth elder of the Divine Plant Cult dare to pursue them alone in the presence of military reinforcements? Was he insane, seeking his own death? It couldn't be insanity. The only possibility was that there were undercover agents of the Divine Plant Cult among the reinforcements, ready to work with him. And this agent was most likely the man piloting the mecha. That man said so much just now, clearly stalling for time until the ninth elder arrived, and then to join forces in capturing Lin Zikan. While Yuan Dongji considered all these things, she led Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan through the water at full speed. She wanted to take Li Moyu and the others with her, but she simply couldn't carry so many people. Boom! 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 The second Yuan Dongji jumped into the water with the two, all the mechanically modified humans suspended in the air plunged into the water as well. Even the mechanically modified humans piloting the armed helicopters activated the autopilot mode and swiftly followed into the water. At the same time, the hunched-over masked man and the massive Shan University mecha, which were rapidly closing in from a distance, also rushed into the water one after another. The single purpose of their rapid dive into the water was to chase Yuan Dongji, who was fleeing with the two. More accurately, they were after Lin Zikan, who was being carried away by Yuan Dongji. Yuan Dongji realized that her belief in the presence of a Divine Plant Cult undercover agent among the reinforcements was incorrect. Because it wasn't a case of reinforcements being infiltrated by the Divine Plant Cult, but rather that the reinforcements were all covert operatives of the Divine Plant Cult. What's happening here? In the trees, Liu Tianrong was utterly baffled. Just a moment ago, he thought the hunched-over masked man was courting death by pursuing them alone, surely doomed to be killed by the combined forces of Yuan Dongji and the mecha. But right after that thought, Yuan Dongji suddenly took Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan and fled into the water. Following that, the hunched-over masked man and all the military reinforcements also dived in. In just a brief moment, nearly everyone was gone. Only 4 people stood disheveled in the trees, utterly bewildered, not having processed what had happened. Could it be that all the reinforcements just now were from the Divine Plant Cult? Liu Tianrong suddenly thought of this and was struck with a chilling fear, feeling utterly hopeless. Li Moyu, Ma Ziwei, and Luo Yongjian, upon hearing him, were somewhat frightened. Liu Tianrong quickly came to his senses, turned to the 3 and said, "Let's go, we need to get out of here fast, in case things are as I suspect. We might get caught up in the ensuing battle if we stay here." No sooner had he spoken. A massive spray of water exploded hundreds of meters ahead of them. It was Yuan Dongji, emerging from the water with Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan, shooting up at an incredible speed and bringing up a deluge of seawater. Then boom, boom resounded several times. All the mechanically modified humans who had followed Yuan Dongji into the water, the Shan University mecha, and the ninth elder of the Divine Plant Cult, burst out of the water in an instant, surrounding Yuan Dongji on all sides. Confronted with the encirclement, Yuan Dongji looked horribly ashen. There was no escape. It was impossible to flee underwater. Every route was blocked by a net of bloody vines, there was no way out. Principal Yuan, it's not easy to evolve into a rare-level creature. There's no need for both sides to suffer. Hand over Lin Zikan to us, and we won't trouble you any further." The hunched-over masked man looked at Yuan Dongji and urged. Although the current situation was many against one, and their side had 2 rare-level combatants. If a rare-level fighter chose to fight to the death, it was very likely they could take down another fighter of the same rank with them. The hunched-over masked man didn't want to pay this price and hoped to complete the mission without injuries. Chapter 289, 185, Divine Punishment. Shen Qinghan's outburst. Ninth Elder in danger. Hand over Lin Zikan? Facing the hunchbacked man in the mask's demand, Yuan Dongji had no verbal response. Her way of responding to the hunchbacked masked man was to sacrifice her own blood, overstimulate the exotic beast gene in her body further, and increase her strength. The moment her blood was devoured by the exotic beast gene, the degree of Yuan Dongji's transformation deepened instantaneously. Her brownish eyes rapidly dulled to yellow, the rounded lenses grew elongated, filled with an impressive aura. At the same time, the dragon horns atop her head grew by 7 parts, the scales on her body became wider and thicker, and a robust dragon tail grew behind her. In the blink of an eye, she transformed from a cold and aloof beauty to a woman full of beastly allure and dragon might. To save 2 outsiders with no blood relation, sacrificing her future and sealing her own potential, she's truly lost her mind. Watching Yuan Dongji's body undergo massive transformation, the hunchbacked man in the mask felt somewhat incomprehensible. Yuan Dongji severely overactivated the Jiaolong gene, causing a deep fusion with her main gene. If she couldn't suppress the Jiaolong gene in time, once it fully merged, she would only be able to coexist with the Jiaolong gene, leaving no room for other exotic beast genes. The limit of a Jiaolong would become her limit, with no possibility of evolving further. Seal her potential limit. Yuan Dongji, unimpressed, said, "My potential limit was sealed long ago, with my talent only supporting evolution up to the rare level under conventional methods." Her voice was very cold, colder than ever before. Her excessive transformation had reduced her humanity, with human emotions becoming fainter. In their place, her bestial nature grew increasingly intense. The hunchbacked man in the mask still preferred not to fight and continued to persuade, "Talent is certainly important, but sometimes choice is even more crucial. The so-called evolutionary limit you speak of can be broken with sufficient evolutionary resources. For instance, your merged Jiaolong gene, although dragon is part of its name, it's not worthy of the title dragon, and of course the limit for someone who merges with the Jiaolong gene is low. If you were to merge with the true dragon gene, then breaking free from the rare level constraint and evolving into a higher epic level being would be a breeze." The hunchbacked man in the mask continued, "While your transformation isn't profound yet, I suggest you quickly suppress the exotic beast gene in your body and join the divine plant cult to embark on the right path. Once you join the divine plant cult, you'll have the opportunity to merge with the true dragon gene. Moreover, a place among the elders of the cult will assuredly be yours." The hunchbacked man in the mask sincerely invited Yuan Dongji to join the divine plant cult, wearing a smile throughout the whole process. The mechanically modified humans and mechas around were ready to act at any moment. Should Yuan Dongji make any sudden move, they wouldn't hesitate to open fire. Facing the invitation from the man in the mask, Yuan Dongji not only was unmoved but also felt a deep loathing for the heretical sect in her heart. She spread out her spiritual power, sensing the positioning of her enemies around her. Then, with a thought, her spiritual power surged instantly. The next moment, the calm sea beneath her feet suddenly rose with towering waves. The waves morphed into several dragons breaking through the water, opening their vast maws capable of swallowing the sun and moon, engulfing all the nearby enemies, crushing and grinding them frantically. This scene happened in the span of a lightning flash. None of the surrounding heretics could react in time to dodge, they were all directly swallowed by the dragons and dragged into the depths. "You two, get away quickly." After speaking, Yuan Dongji flung Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan away, letting the pair of childhood sweethearts leave the battlefield to avoid being affected by the ensuing battle's shockwaves. After catapulting the two over 100 meters away, Yuan Dongji didn't waste a second, immediately diving to the sea's bottom to pursue and eradicate the heretics of the divine plant cult. On the other side, Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan also didn't dare to waste a second. The instant they hit the water, they began swimming away from the battlefield at high speed, without any pause. In just a moment, they had swum hundreds of meters away. Boom! A loud noise of water breaking sounded from behind. The hunchbacked man in the mask erupted from beneath the sea, moving at a speed invisible to the naked eye upon the water, chasing after the fleeing Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan. However, he had barely been chasing for 2 seconds. When boom, a shadow obscured the sun. 100-meter dragon burst forth beneath his feet, snatching him up in a fierce bite and dragging him back down to the sea's bottom. Boom! Another great noise erupted. Following the sound, the hunchbacked man in the mask once again burst forth from the sea, swiftly moving across the water's surface, in hot pursuit of Lin Zikan, who hadn't swum far away. Rising alongside him, atop a giant dragon, was Yuan Dongji, as well as the 10-meter-tall Shanghai armor. As for the mechanically modified humans previously swallowed by the dragon, at this point, they had been reduced to vast pieces of bloodied metal wreckage, doomed to remain in the dark depths of the sea forever. Whoosh whoosh whoosh! The Shanghai armor, trailing at the rear, launched several sparking missiles from its back, aiming precisely at the ahead Yuan Dongji to stop her pursuit of the hunchbacked man in the mask. When Yuan Dongji sensed the incoming missiles, she neither dodged nor avoided, but instead controlled the giant dragon with a mere thought, intercepting all the missiles. Seeing the missiles ineffective, the man piloting the armor immediately adjusted the parallel frame to a standing position, steadily hovering above the sea surface. Then, the waist of the armor glowed with a blinding light, emitting terrifying heat. The next second, an energy beam nearly half a meter in radius violently burst forth from the armor's waist. Chapter 290, 185. Divine Punishment. Shen Qinghan's outburst. 9th Elder in danger, _2. It pierced directly through the 100-meter dragon that blocked out the sun, ruthlessly bombing towards Yuan Dongji at the front. Yuan Dongji sensed the danger. She wanted to dodge, but her speed was simply not enough. She had barely made a dodging motion when her entire body was engulfed by the energy beam, suffering the horror of extreme temperatures eroding her. The energy beam continued for several seconds. During this time, the seawater below was being continuously evaporated, exposing a trench several meters deep. In the moment the light faded, Yuan Dongji reappeared in the mecha pilot's view, her body charred black, her clothes and hair all turned to ashes, emitting a burnt smell. Thanks to the scales shielding her, Yuan Dongji, whose clothes had been burnt away, did not reveal her body. She's only slightly injured. The man piloting the mecha had a face full of disbelief. The energy beam was the mecha's most powerful attack method. Yet Yuan Dongji was able to withstand an energy beam with her flesh and blood and not suffer serious injuries. This caused the man to feel fear. If one shot isn't enough, then take another. The man suppressed the fear in his heart and pressed the launch button for the energy beam once again. But this time, before the energy beam could be fired, the mecha was struck by a giant dragon that instantly materialized and was sunk deep into the seabed, being wildly torn and strangled. Metal parts from its exterior kept falling off. At the same time, another 100-meter dragon made of seawater instantly formed in front, knocking the hunchback masked figure pursuing Lin Zikan into the seabed. Yuan Dongji didn't follow into the seabed. She just hovered above the sea surface, controlling the 200-meter dragons remotely, continuously attacking the mecha and the hunchback masked figure at the sea bottom. During this time, Yuan Dongji, who had just been hit directly by the energy beam, was rapidly self-healing. The burned skin began to reform. New long hair started to grow from her bald head. Aside from the clothes that turned to ashes, all other damage healed back perfectly. Boom! Boom! 2 explosive noises were heard from the sea surface in succession. The hunchback masked figure emerged from the seabed, covered in horrifying wounds, blood incessantly seeping out. The mecha broke through the water right after, its weapons almost completely damaged and unusable. Yuan Dongji, who had transformed into a dragon woman, was too powerful. Even facing 2 adversaries, she wasn't at a disadvantage at all. In fact, she held an absolute upper hand, completely suppressing both the hunchback masked figure and the mecha throughout. The hunchback masked figure looked ahead, sensing that Linziken was swimming farther away, about to escape his perception range, and immediately erupted with all his chi blood, surging forward in the water at high speed. The moment he broke away, he did not forget to issue a deadly order to the man piloting the mecha behind him. Self-destruct. Use the backup hidden energy source to self-destruct and delay Yuan Dongji. Otherwise, your whole family will die miserably. Hearing this cruel command that required sacrificing his life, the man's face was instantly draped in despair. He was still young, he didn't want to die. But he wanted even less for his wife and daughter to die. Without much hesitation, the man issued the command for the backup hidden energy source to self-destruct to the mecha and then piloted the mecha towards Yuan Dongji at the highest speed. Yuan Dongji saw this and immediately dived into the seabed to take emergency cover. However, before she managed to get into the water, she was already approached by the mecha. Boom! A deafening explosion sounded. The whole sea surface erupted with fire. A massive amount of water instantly vaporized. The surrounding towering trees turned into ash in the blink of an eye. Yuan Dongji, at the center of the explosion, was directly bombed into a critical state. The scales on her body had almost all shattered and fallen off. Her right arm was blown off halfway. 1/3 of her head was gone. The whole person lay on the sea surface full of fire, barely alive, completely incapacitated. However, as long as she still had a breath and enough energy, the living dead slug gene within her would keep repairing her wounds until she was fully healed. But time did not permit her to heal slowly. Because at this moment, the hunchback masked figure was chasing Linziken at high speed. If she couldn't immediately go to stop him, then Linziken was doomed to fall into the hands of the hunchback masked figure. She didn't hesitate at all in the face of the current situation. She sacrificed her essence blood immediately, feeding the living dead slug's genes within her body, accelerating the self-healing of her wounded body. Elsewhere, without Yuan Dongji's interference, the hunchbacked masked man quickly caught up with Linziken. He was able to catch up, all thanks to Shen Qinghan, who slowed down Linziken and exposed his location. Linziken had natural camouflage to hide his presence. But Shen Qinghan did not. Under the sea, Linziken sensed that the hunchbacked masked man had caught up. He didn't hesitate and immediately deactivated the natural camouflage biometric attribute, deciding to split up and swim away from Shen Qinghan, drawing the masked man's attention to himself. Shen Qinghan, afraid of causing more trouble for him, didn't dare to hesitate and quickly parted ways with him. Bang bang bang! With a thought, the hunchbacked masked man controlled a large number of vines to shoot into the seabed. The vines under his control did not all pursue Linziken. Instead, they split into two groups, part chasing the slippery Linziken, and part going after the slower swimming Shen Qinghan. It was just a moment. Shen Qinghan was entangled by several thick vines around her body, violently pulled out of the water, and suspended in the air above the ocean, unable to move. Linziken, on the other hand, relied on his Forest Lord and Advanced Spirit biometric attributes to escape the vine's grasp several times, never getting caught. The hunchbacked masked man didn't even intend to capture him. After all, he had tried several times before and never succeeded. The hunchbacked masked man's real target was Shen Qinghan, who had always been with Linziken. Linziken, come out! If you don't come out, I'll kill her. Take her back to the divine plant cult to be publicly shamed and tortured to death. The hunchbacked masked man, realizing the unique relationship between Linziken and Shen Qinghan, directly threatened him with Shen Qinghan's life. While shouting these words, he wrapped the vines tightly around Shen Qinghan's mouth to silence her. He didn't want to hear any idiotic words like "don't mind me, just run." He just wanted Linziken to appear immediately and surrender without wasting time. Swoosh! Faced with the threat, Linziken was forced to reveal himself, immediately breaking through the water from the seabed, appearing right before the hunchbacked masked man. He looked calmly at the hunchbacked masked man and said, "I'll go with you. Let her go." While uttering this sentence, his feelings were not as calm as he appeared. He was filled with regret. He had decided to flee with Shen King Han, believing Yuan Dongji could hold off the masked man and the mech. If he had known Yuan Dongji couldn't hold them off, he would never have fled with Shen King Han. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in the world. Buzz buzz buzz. The hunchbacked masked man shot out several blood-red vines, entangling Lin Zikin and pulling him out of the water. He then kept his word by immediately releasing the vines from Shen King Han, setting her free. As the personnel manager of the Divine Plant Cult, his mission was to bring Lin Zikin back to the cult, not to make an enemy of him. Given Lin Zikin's astonishing talent, once he became a member of the Divine Plant Cult, he would undoubtedly ascend to a high position soon. The hunchbacked masked man, with a clear mind, would not make an enemy of a Lin Zikin with such a bright future. "Kid, when you get to the Divine Plant Cult's headquarters and see the unmatched god of the origin land, you'll thank me for taking you away today." The hunchbacked masked man laughed, and without staying a moment longer, swiftly left with Lin Zikin from the forest turned into an ocean by the tsunami. Behind him, Shen King Han, seeing Lin Zikin being taken away by the hunchbacked masked man, frantically swam after them like mad, desperately chasing. But she couldn't catch up. The gap in biological level was too great. No matter how good she was in the water, she couldn't keep up with the pace of a rare level fighter. Watching Lin Zikin's figure get farther and farther away, Shen King Han cried out in despair. "Xiao Chen! Xiao Chen! Xiao Chen!" Just as her tears wouldn't stop and her heart felt utterly hopeless. Suddenly, an ancient and weathered murmuring sounded in her ears. "God! Offense against God! Divine retribution!" In the moment when the murmuring ceased,